I am sheep out in a mountain dene. My home is 600 miles north of Yellowknife. So again, I'm a little bit of ways from home, but I like the way that things are being done around this part of the country. To me, it's less of competition. Everything here is done in a good way, which is we are not concerned about competing with each other. We want to be in a place where there's a good feeling towards one another. And one of the things about that is that it wasn't always like that. I'll get to that in a few minutes. But one of the protocols that we have amongst all Indigenous peoples is that they always say, if you're going to talk to a group of people about something serious, you have to tell a story first. So I'm going to tell you a little story here. This one is about a medicine man and his patient. Just about every Indigenous culture, we use certain plants. The four of them are tobacco, sweetgrass, cedar, and sage. Each one has a different purpose, but it always is. There's my grandson right there. He's never seen his grandfather talking with a microphone before, so he's wondering who the funny man with the hat on is. And so one of the four main plants that we all use as Indigenous people is the tobacco. You can consider it as a spiritual currency. It's not meant to pay for anything, but it's meant to show respect for whatever it is you're wanting from someone else, or if you're going to pick some medicine from the country, the spirits expect you to give some tobacco in exchange for that, what you're doing. Also with an elder or someone that's about to do a ceremonial for you, you have to introduce yourself and give that tobacco as a sign of respect for what it is you want to take place. So here it is, the patient. He's got a problem at home. He says he's got a problem with his marriage. He's going to lose his wife. He's going to lose his house. Going to lose his car. He's going to lose everything. So he goes to the medicine man and offers up the tobacco with his side of the story, and they set a date for the ceremony to figure out how to solve that particular problem. And that day comes, and the medicine man is saying to his patient, "You've already brought me the tobacco, so we're about to begin to do this for you. But the way we are going to be doing it is the way it's been done for thousands and thousands of years, which is you take that smoke that you rolled up, you smoke some of it, but don't smoke all of it, you kind of keep it in your mind what you have in mind for the Creator to help you in that way. And then you give me that tobacco and I'll back it up for you. I'll do the rest of the ceremonial, my part of it for you. But I also have to ask you if you have any questions about how this is being done. So the man says, well, I've already explained it to you for you to help me out. If we don't do this the right way, I'm going to lose everything. But I think a better way to do it is you take that tobacco and you smoke it with my problem in mind. I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to lose my house and my car and everything I own. I'm in a bad shape over here, so I think you can do it better that way. And the medicine man turns to him and he says, I already told you that this was done only a certain way for thousands and thousands of years. So you have to do your part. I'm not going to lie for you, he says. I don't want to get in trouble with the boss, the Creator. He's watching us closely. On top of that, I don't have any insurance for what I do. So we have to do it that way. The reason why the elders want us to do those in that particular way is that we understand that every person can find themselves in a story, and that's a purpose for that. But I'm also here to talk about residential schools. I'm a 12-year survivor of these places. Yesterday I met someone that came from the Kamloops, BC. That is the first time that the public became awake about all these unmarked graves of children. At first, everybody thought, estimated about 5,000 of these children didn't make it back to their home. But now it's up to 10,000, and even more for missing and murdered women and children, who are girls and women. We are related to all these people. Even back home, I lost one of my niece's daughters like that. She was murdered right in the middle of my hometown over a Mickey bottle of whiskey. Something so important, a human life, in exchange for some type of momentary situation. It points to a kind of a sickness that we still have in our Canadian society. But not everything is lost. Our elders say that an illness or a sickness that comes to a person or amongst the people is a chance for us to redeem ourselves as human beings, to recondition ourselves to a new kind of healthy reality. Unfortunately, 153,000 of our people went through this residential school experience. So my story is just one of all those. One of all those that I'm sure touches each and every person here. There's always signs of hope. You know, I think back to the way the old-time Indians used to call Canada the grandmother's country. That was because of Queen Victoria. At the time, she didn't want that whiskey traders to come into the Indian reservations. Still, a lot of our people died of starvation just to see that Trans-Canada Railroad go through. It's each one of our responsibilities to face that kind of situation in our own way. Because when you look at how change happens, it's called a paradigm, which it started all the way back from the Aristotle and the Greeks, what they call the principle of absolutes. In other words, one of us would be so intelligent and so smart to have all the answers for everything, such as Aristotle in those days. That became the truth at the time. That kind of truth existed up until the time of the scientists, Galileo, and the other Isaac Newtons and Copernicus. I don't know if anybody ever knew that Newton figs were actually named after Isaac Newton. People figured that he knew what he was talking about. That's why that happened. As you can imagine, we like to joke in our culture, so just take it easy on trying to understand too much of this. We don't either. So that existed up until the 16th century, that particular paradigm, that particular truth, that particular time of change. Since then, about the beginning of the 19th century, now we have indigenous knowledge. Even scientists are beginning to agree that the Indians, that the indigenous peoples have been right all along. There is life everywhere. There is life everywhere you go, even when you think about something that may be inanimate, dead to us, a dead language, anything like that. There's always life. That means there's always hope. An example of that is if you test the water up on top of the mountains where it comes from, that'll give you some type of a picture of the water, what's going on with the water. You follow that particular stream down the mountain certain ways, you test it again, it's going to give you a different picture. What does that mean? That means that water has life. That water, just as a human being, has some type of an experience. That water demands our respect. The land is the same way. You follow the water down to the ocean and test it again, it's going to give you a different picture of the life that's happening, the experience that's happening with that water. It changes. And so do we as human beings. The only paradigm that actually exists to be a truth like none other is that the answer to all of our problems as far as solving what's going on in the world today exists. But it doesn't exist in any kind of leadership. It doesn't exist in any particular type of religion, faith, or belief. Where it exists is in each one of us. The last person to board the Freedom Train begins that evolution of a healing journey that we are already on. That means that things are changing without our say-so, but it needs to have our input Canadian citizens, as each and every one of us, we have to claim a responsibility for things that happened in the past. We cannot just simply forgive and forget. Some things are inexcusable to the human nature. We cannot act any old way just to get our way. Even amongst Indigenous people, when I hear the word reconciliation, to me it means I have to understand how to speak my own language, how to make myself understood as an Indigenous person. If I expect a good treatment from somebody else that is different from me, I have to understand where I'm coming from. I have to understand my culture. All of those things were taken away from us as children, from about the age of 7 to about the age of 19, when we finished, done with high school. One thing we noticed is that we never really met or knew each other until after we graduated. After we started to go to the sweat lodges and healing ceremonies. That's when we understood each other as individuals. There is no reason why we can't do that beyond our own particular cultural beliefs. The idea is to step beyond ourselves. Think of ourselves as human beings first. Most of the Indigenous names are understood as people calling themselves a human being. I am a Dene, that is a human being. Other tribes and nations have the individual words for each other. Usually it involves being a human person. That has nothing to do with conquering another person, but it does have something to do with understanding another person and what kind of respect we should accord that other nation. We're one step ahead of the rest of the world here in Canada because everybody wants to come here. I met a couple of volunteers this morning from Korea, and I was telling them that you could go to some places in Canada and be missing in action for weeks and months if you wanted to, and those weeks and months usually happen during an election over here. But I want you to, on this day of all days, on behalf of survivors of Indigenous nations, residential schools, I want you to understand that it's not the final page in our Canadian history, but it could be the first page of a human understanding of one another. This is the reason why even our old-timers who were constantly at war with each other called this country the grandmother's country. They felt safer over here. There is absolutely no reason why we should turn our back on what is happening in some other places amongst the Jewish people, amongst the people in the Middle East, the Palestinians, the people in over there amongst the countries that are at war these days. We are not a safe sanctuary to these people for no reason. We already have a head start in order to understand what the problem is. What we have to understand is we have an individual responsibility to each other, beyond the hurt, beyond the shame that has been our history so far. We need to take a better look at each other. We're not going to be here forever. We need to leave at least a memory of a people that cared for each other at one time, or started caring for each other at one time, in order to face ourselves in the future. There will be a day of reckoning. Each nation has its own version of it, but for a human person to be able to take responsibility for their actions today, that is what we want. I could go on for quite a long time. I have a doctorate in Indigenous studies. I can understand how certain things happen. But I cannot understand when people just sit back and let somebody else do all the work. That's why I want to follow my grandfather's advice. He told me, if you see somebody doing something that you really admire, you should give them something. I want to call up Lynn Taylor, wherever she is. She might be walking a dog out there somewhere or doing some voluntary eating of the Three Sisters soup or something like this. I want to call her up and present her with something of my gratitude for her work on behalf of all of us here. What my grandfather said about that is that whatever you say to a human person, that person will always forget what it is you have to say to them, even 5 or 10 minutes after you had said what it is you have to say. But if you give them something, that person will never forget you, because they have that constant reminder. But before she gets here, I just want to tell one more funny story. It's about what you witnessed today here, about the powwow. I'll just tell a funny story first. There was this famous powwow announcer, and those people are carefully picked because they know how to tell jokes and stories all day long to keep the mood of the people up. And that's what this person was. But on top of that, he was a former champion powwow dancer. He always won every contest that he was called forth to participate in. Every dance, he always won. And it came to a time close to the end of his dancing career when they played a very fast song, probably a fancy dance or something like that. And just as the dance ended, he stood as he usually stood, with his head down and his hand out like this. That's where the big money always went, right into his hand after the contest. But at that particular dance, the arena director walked right by him. And he talked to that arena director and he said, "Hey, you, come back here. How come you're not putting that big money, the big checks in my hand right over here? I'm the one that always wins these contests. Come back and give me that big money." The arena director came back to him and he said, "We were all watching. All the judges were watching your every move. You stopped exactly when that last beat happened, but at the same time, your belly kept going, so we had to count you out." Anyway, I don't want to keep you too long. I don't know where Lynn disappeared to again. She's
There she is.
busy doing a lot of things.
Just pull her up. She's there. Lynn? Lynn?
But I just want you to keep that in mind. All of our ceremonials are of a healing nature. The powwow is meant to celebrate the experience of life. There's a powwow, sweat lodge, sun dance, and the rain dance. I think somebody was doing the rain dance yesterday because they might have retired and maybe they went to the same place to the guy that got the big money in the first place. Where did she disappear to again?
Lynn, come on, get over here. He's looking for you all the time.
Anyway, on behalf of everybody here for your voluntary work, I want to give you this nice shawl to keep you warm in the coming winter. Merci. Miigwech.
Speech.
Wait for Jared here.
Thank you for your speech.